Elden Ring Night Reign is a world that is shrouded in mystery. The lands between are falling apart, and everything from the crumbling Roundtable hold to even bosses from previous games returning into this one intermingled world. So today, let's break down what we know so far and piece together what Elden Ring Night Reign appears to be telling us. From the footage we do have, we know that Night Reign takes place in a version of the lands between, but clearly it is drastically different from what we experience in base game Elden Ring. And I have a theory that Elden Ring Night Reign is a sequel to the events that happened and transpired within the base game of Elden Ring. A strong point for this is very much the Roundtable hold. It's the hub world for Elden Ring and the hub world for Night Reign, except in Night Reign, the Roundtable hold is decrepit. It's overgrown. Its once hidden and secluded walls are now crumbled and are wrapped around with ivy and plant growth. This could very much imply that a substantial amount of time has passed since we last saw this hub. Then there's the main lands, the presumably lands between, where you get to explore as one of the 4 characters that we are aware of so far. It very much resembles the lands between. The architecture is similar. The enemies and denizens of the lands are familiar. Presumably be pretty safe to assume that this is still the lands between, just in a state of crumbling. Another interesting point to note here, you as the character don't appear to be tarnished, or rather don't appear to have any connection to the lands apart from seeking out the Night Lords. There isn't a grandiose Erd tree, so presumably this takes place after the Erd tree was felled. The characters you play have no ties to the Erd tree or the Grace of Gold. Instead, they almost appear as outside forces or looters invading what's left of a dying world. And this could just be a presumptuous statement, but there is a fascinating character that reinforces the idea that you are looting and taking advantage of these lands. And that's the return of the Fell Omen.
There is no escape for thee, little pillager, bent on sacking the lands of gold.
From my understanding, Margit, or as they're named in this game, the Fell Omen, appears randomly while you are in the act of losing this world. He very much calls you out for your actions through his dialogue choice. If this really is Margit, and if this game does take place as a sequel to Elden Ring, why is he still alive? As in Elden Ring, we presumably, as the Tarnished, became Elden Lord and defeated Margit. I have another theory on this. The presence of allegedly Margit in Night Reign doesn't necessarily mean that this isn't the same lands between. Perhaps this is an alternate outcome where the Grace of Gold from the Erd tree did not awaken a Tarnished, and as such, no Tarnish ever made their way to become Elden Lord. Or a Tarnish was chosen, perhaps during their journey they fell to one of the many dangers and treacheries of the lands between, never making it to Margit, leaving Margit alive and the Erd tree to continue. Perhaps the Erd tree fell another way, or it succumbed to a natural death later on, but regardless, Margit remains here and appears to be conducting his duties as before. He has always loved the lands, and despite being shunned for the fact that he was born an Omen, he still continues to protect his homeland, even to its crumbling end. That then ties into our next point. Why are the lands between crumbling? One possibility is that the lands between have simply existed for too long. Maybe similar to Dark Souls 3 and the Dreadheap, this could be a world collapsing under its own weight, with the Age of Fire prolonging the natural cycle of light and dark. In those games, the Abyss gradually reclaims the light, spreading the darkness and forcing everything to fold in on itself. Perhaps something similar happened here. The Erd tree was an implementation of outer powers. It was so powerful that it disrupted the natural cycle of life and death. Even the Rune of Death was stolen as well in order to ensure that the Erd tree could bestow resurrective powers through its Grace of Gold. what we see in Elden Ring Night Reign could be similar. It could be outside forces, or the presence of the lands feeling that they have existed for too long, or perhaps the interruption of the natural cycle of life and death resulted in the Night Lords being woven into existence in order to bring back what was natural to the world. Perhaps even they were the ones who felled the Erd Tree when the Tarnished failed. And on the topic of bosses as well, one of the biggest shocks from watching the Night Reign trailer was witnessing the return of bosses from Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 with the Centipede Demon and the Nameless King, presumably enemies from an entirely different world. They've somehow found their way into the lands between. But why? Well, if the world is crumbling upon itself, it's possible that remnants from lands within the same universe may be drawn into one singular location, similar to how everything at the end of Dark Souls 3 was drawn onto itself. Perhaps we're seeing and experiencing something similar, with enemies and characters all being cluttered into one location as the lands around them crumble. While this is very much all speculation, I think it's an interesting take and an interesting look into why these bosses are here at all. And I'd like to think that there is more of an in-game lore reason rather than just for the sake of fan service. Finally, what does all of this tell us? I like to think that Night Reign isn't just another story within the Elden Ring universe. It's the ending of one that we have already started. The Tarnished are gone, the world is crumbling and breaking apart, and those who once protected it, such as Margit, are still fighting to the end. And you, as your characters, are simply outsiders, whether you're seeking riches, answers, or have an inherent reason to quell the Night Lords. We won't necessarily know until we have more information. So speculation is all we have for now, but I think that's the fun bit. We get to speculate what could possibly come next. And let me know in the comments what all of you think about Elden Ring Night Reign, and what some of your biggest speculations and theories about the game and its enemies are. Come the full game, whatever gets added will be a fascinating addition to the world and the lore of Elden Ring. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I'll see everyone in the next video.